All right, how's everybody doing today? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Hey, we are live. We should be on Facebook and YouTube. Today is Monday, February 26, 2017. Monday, February 26, 2017. And we are live. All right, we're on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, good. All right, so how's everybody doing today? Hotep. Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. And today I'm going to talk, we're going to do a brief preview of an online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so we're going to be teaching a session of this, session number one. I have a new section starting up this evening. We're going to start a little after 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we deal with thousands of years of history, thousands of years of African history, African-American history. And I'm going to test my levels here as well. We deal with the transatlantic slave trade, but we deal with thousands of years of history before that as well. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? I want to check the audio, make sure everybody can hear me all right. Okay, so when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start our history in slavery. Okay, so checking out the audio, good. We can't start our history in slavery. We first have to understand that African people have been in the land we call the United States of America. We've been here at least 51,700 years, at least 51,700 years. Yes, the transatlantic slave trade happened. And I encourage people, this is one of the texts we use in the book. Texts we use in the class, one of the books we use in the class from Dr. David Imhotep. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence. You don't have to buy this book. You don't have to buy this book to be able to listen. Be able to view the class. Okay. And okay, good. They said they can hear me loud and clear. Yeah, you don't have to buy the book to be able to follow along in class. I cite a few excerpts from the book. It's good to have for your home library. Okay, every African American home should have an entertainment center. Well, they have an education center. We have entertainment centers. Every African American home should have a education center as well. Okay, just like you have the University of Sankore at Timbuktu, okay, in the Songhai and Mali Empire, just like you have the University of Genet as well in West Africa, and they have libraries there. We need to have libraries in our homes also, just as you had libraries in ancient Kemet as well. We need to have libraries in our home also. Okay, and one of the things we deal with is a chronology of history. Okay, I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have slides, we have video clips, reference articles, books, a lot of information. So it's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. Okay, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I'm going to do a brief overview here. And we'll bring up the PowerPoint presentation. But we have to understand the chronology of history. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with how the Moors bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. They go into the Iberian Peninsula 711 AD, and they save Europe from disease and ignorance. They take in teachings from ancient Kemet. They're the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. They take these teachings into Europe. They teach mathematics, science, astronomy, geography. They take in spherical globes, almanacs. They take in something called alchemy, which today we call chemistry. They're introducing musical instruments, different types of music. They build libraries, universities. They introduce a postal system, introduce annotation systems, all different types of things like this. Okay, and they're going to do this throughout Europe. Okay, so and the Moors helped set up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages starting August 3rd, 1492, when Columbus set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. All right. And we do dispel a lot of myths in the course also, because contrary to popular belief, Columbus never comes to the land that we call the United States of America. Contrary to popular belief, Columbus never comes to the land we call the United States of America. The closest he comes here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. Closest he comes here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and post a link here so you can register for the course. The course is only $40 for this 12-hour, 6-week online course. All the sessions are recorded. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. Anything that you miss, you can go back and watch it over and over again. We're going to post this link again. It says register here. And we're going to start the class tonight about 7:15 p.m. The classes are normally on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But there was a Comcast outage in my area here last Friday, Thursday and Friday. There was a Comcast outage. There was a problem at the main location for Comcast. So there was a outage with the internet. So I didn't have a steady internet connection to broadcast live, but they got it fixed. They gave me a credit on my bill, but the credit is not worth the time that I lost. But that's a whole nother story. Okay. All right. So let me pull this up here. Okay. Now, anytime I do a presentation, I know I'm going to say some things that people never heard before, may say some things that people disagree with. I usually have people put their fingers together to form a circle. I usually say something like this. The space inside this circle represents my realm of knowledge. Everything that I think I know about whatever I think I know is represented within the circumference of this circle. I must keep in mind that there's still things to know that exist outside the circumference of my own awareness. So the reason why I say that is because oftentimes when people hear something that contradicts what they've been taught, what they believe, or what they think they know, they automatically reject it without doing any research to determine the validity of the new information that they're learning. And at the same time, they usually don't use that same level of scrutiny to analyze, critique, or reevaluate what they believe or what they think they know. So just because you know everything that you know about what you know does not mean you know everything there is to know about what you know, because there's still things that exist outside the circumference of your own awareness. And these are the things that we deal with in the class. We deal with a lot of things that people don't know, even people who study history, a lot of things that people don't know. And one of the things we deal with are a lot of archaeological discoveries that have taken place, and some of them very recently, that are causing scientists, archaeologists, paleontologists to have to rethink everything, and it's causing them to push dates back. Okay, so we try to deal with the chronology of history. It's important to understand these historical events chronologically. The transatlantic slave trade did not happen in a vacuum. It is the sequence of a number of historical events that take place, and they have a impact. They have a domino effect, and they lead to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, so we deal with the power of image and the negative images of African Americans in the media, how that impacts us, how that impacts the way we think, feel, act, and behave. We deal with studies like this study right here came out in 2012, blackamericaweb.com, CNN, other news outlets picked this story up. This was a study that talked about how TV kills black boys' self-esteem. TV kills black boys' self-esteem. Now, African Americans watch a disproportionate amount of television. We know the television, you call it TV, I call it television, because it's a vision that tells lies. This is the number one way that European white supremacist images are fed to us. We know that African American adults 18 to 49 watch 7.2 hours of television a day, which is about 50 hours a week. African American children 13 to 18 watch 5 hours and 54 minutes of television a day. Okay, which is about 42 hours a week. And what they found in this study was that it stated here, a new, precise, and exhaustive year-long study finds that watching television regularly distorts and ultimately destroys the self-esteem of black boys. Ultimately destroys the self-esteem of black boys who find themselves comparing one another to the characters they view on air, leaving them feeling trapped and as if there are very few positive life paths they can aspire to, as if there are very few positive life paths they can aspire to. And this study talks about the negative impact of these images on African-American girls and African-American boys as well. Now, a lot of people ask, well, why do we have to study all this history? Why do we have to study all this history? Okay, because every ethnic group in America, for the most part, they have their history and culture intact, and they use it to fight for scarce wealth, power, and resources. They use it to fight for scarce wealth, power, and resources, because other ethnic groups don't have to have conventions about why they should do business with one another. They just do it because their culture and history, and your history and culture gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. They influence your economic empowerment and your political empowerment. Okay, so when we look at another study here, and the AfricanGlobe.net had this article, and you can research this and look at the original study. This deals with one of the reasons why studying African history is so important, and why it's so important for us to teach it to our children, just like every other ethnic group teaches their history and culture to their children. This article deals with how Black teens with racial pride do better in school. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. And this talks about how African-American teenagers perform better academically when their parents instill in them a sense of racial pride, when their parents instill in them a sense of racial pride, not when their parents, not when African-American parents teach them to be white, not when they teach them to be colorblind, but when they instill in them a sense of racial pride. Now, this was a joint study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. Most of our people never heard of this study, which is why we have to do research, which is one of the reasons why I created the African History Network. Okay, because at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you have been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Now, this was a joint study by two white universities, Harvard University and University of Pittsburgh. Okay, so if we don't want to believe Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, we can listen to what Europeans tell us and why we should study our own history. So in this joint study, it said a new study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University shows that when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, okay, not a post-racial America, but feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. It didn't talk about teaching our children to be colorblind. It didn't talk about teaching our children to believe in the myth of a post-racial America. It talked about how when parents teach their children to have pride in their history, pride in African history, pride in African culture, it promotes feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection. So taking them to Kwanzaa celebrations, taking them to African American History Month celebrations, taking them to African American museums, taking them to taking them to Juneteenth celebrations, things like this. This builds a bond, connects them to their history and culture, causes them to have a respect for their ancestors. Watching documentaries like Eyes on the Prize, watching documentaries, whether it's Hidden Colors or Out of Darkness or Black Friday, one of the documentaries I'm in, Black Friday, What Legacy Will You Leave? These activities connect African-American children to their history and culture, to their ancestors, and gives them a greater sense of racial pride, racial knowledge, and connection. But this is what every other ethnic group does. They don't have to have studies to do it. They don't have to have studies to confirm what they already know. It's good this study comes out because a lot of our people don't know, and many of our people think somehow trying to assimilate or somehow trying to believe in a post-racial America is somehow going to be beneficial to them. No, it's only beneficial to the ones who are trying to convince you that that myth exists. Okay, so this is extremely important. All right, and this also connects them to great African people in our history, whether you talk about Imhotep, whether you talk about John Merrick and the New York Life Insurance Company, whether you talk about Macy Jemison, whether you talk about Ida B. Wells. This connects them to great African people who can serve as models for our children, role models for our children. Very important study. Okay, so we deal with the impact that image has, media, some of the origins of negative stereotypical images that we see in the media going back to slavery, things like this. It's extremely important to understand this, right? Okay, so some other things that we deal with. I'll take you through this. We talk about Malcolm X. Of course, Malcolm's one of my heroes. I was just in Lansing, Michigan, Malcolm's hometown. Okay, when his parents were ran out of Omaha, Nebraska by the Black Legion, they come to Lansing, Michigan. Okay, capital of Michigan is Lansing, Michigan. So I was just up in Lansing, Michigan on Saturday doing a lecture on Malcolm X. 50 years later, why is he still relevant? And who was there? A niece of Malcolm X, Deborah Jones, a niece of Malcolm X. And she did a presentation before me dealing with whatever happened to Malcolm's siblings. Fantastic, fantastic presentation. So if I had to go up after that, sister, so you know the pressure was on. But I do my research. Proper documentation ends all conversation. So I did a presentation on Malcolm, knocked everybody out. She came up afterwards, gave me a hug. She said, brother, I had to give you a hug. Your presentation was on point. She appreciated my research. So I was very pleased with that. But Malcolm's one of my heroes. Malcolm taught us about the media. I've been studying media for 25 years. Malcolm said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the ability, they have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. So that power can be used for either good or either bad. If you inundated with ratchet television shows, ratchet reality TV shows, it can have a negative deleterious effect on you, especially on African-American girls who see themselves negatively represented in these shows and think if I hook up with a baller, if I have a baby by a baller, if I become a stripper, maybe I could hook up with a baller, then I can have a reality TV show and I can have a record deal. I could perform at the BET Awards. I'm not calling any names. Okay, so what happens is that when that foundation is not in place, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, two of my teachers, you've heard me interview them numerous times. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have 750 archived episodes of the African History Network show on the Michael Imhotep show. I have a body of work. I can document what I've done. Okay, you can listen to all these interviews. These podcasts are free for now. You can listen to all these interviews going back 7 years. And when they teach, they talk about the pyramid principle. Okay. And we deal with this in the class. So when we look at the pyramid, we notice that the pyramid has 3 sides. And I think I have it here. And in the course, we talk about religion. We talk about a chronology of history. We deal with a number of information, a lot of information so we could deal with things chronologically. But when we deal with the pyramid has 3 sides. The foundation of that pyramid is African history and culture. African history and culture. And your history and culture gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. Your values, interests, and principles. It influences your economic empowerment and political empowerment. Okay. So it does not matter how much money you have. If that foundation is not in place, you won't know what to do with the money. So consequently, we have a $1.3 trillion economy, approximately. 97% of our dollars are spent with people that don't look like us. Why? It's not lack of money. It's because the foundation is not there, because we have money to make everybody else rich, because 97% of our dollars are spent with people that don't look like us. Okay. Now, you have a lot of people who say, oh, well, it's a myth about the economic buying power, things like this. It has to be transferred. In my degrees in business administration, so I'm speaking from research and experience. Okay, most of these people commenting don't have the background that I have. I'm just keeping it real. All right, there's a reason why I'm in documentaries like Black Friday or Resurrecting Black Wall Street, the blueprint from Dr. Boyce Watkins. I don't just study history. I study business, economic empowerment. My degrees in business administration. I've taught entrepreneurship for 9 years, done business consulting for 7 years. There's a reason why I'm in these various documentaries. There's a reason why I write these articles. So a lot of people say, oh, well, it's a myth about the African-American buying power and things like this. Yes, it has to be translated into real power, but there's a reason why these people are in our communities with these various businesses, gas stations, grocery stores, liquor stores, things like this. Okay, so here we have the pyramid principle. Here we have the pyramid principle here. Let me bring this up right here. Okay, and we'll post a link again. How's everybody doing today? I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm doing a preview of my online class that I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so this is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again if you miss any of it. Okay. We're teaching the session tonight. We're going to start up right around 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I got to finish up here. And the class is only $40. We'll post a link again so you can register for the class. Okay. How's everybody doing? I know people watching us on Facebook and YouTube. How's everybody doing? How do you like this type of information? Okay. We'll post a link here in just a minute. All right. Let me continue. Okay. So let's go to the pyramid principle here. This is very important. And I know Dr. Leonard Jeffries is going to be, those in the New York area, Harlem, New York area, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Friday, June 30th. He's going to be at the Black Theater there, doing a response to Dr. Wesley Muhammad's comments on the Breakfast Club last week. Okay, in reference to Africana studies. But this is the pyramid principle, right? And the foundation of the pyramid, African history and culture, influences your economic empowerment and political empowerment. So we have to take our minds back, okay? What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when we take our minds back, that influences what we do with our money, how we spend our money, the institutions that we support, the businesses that we build. It influences where we spend our dollars. Okay, so this is real. This is not make-believe. Okay, there's a reason why there's a concerted effort to suppress the history of African people. Now, Dr. Jeffries correctly teaches us that whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, self-respect, and self-development. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. Whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, self-respect, and self-development. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. Okay, so this is why there's a concerted effort. Number one, you know, I did, you look at my YouTube broadcast, you look at our Facebook Live broadcast, right? And for those just tuning in, we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, okay? So you can follow us at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Also, you can register for this online course also. If you need me to post a link again, let me know. I'll post a link again also. And then those... they're here in watching on YouTube. We'll post the link here also on YouTube. Okay, so there's a reason why when you have movies, there's a reason why you have an inundation of slavery themed movies, and I deal with this in the course. There's a reason why you have an inundation of slavery themed movies to help keep us in a slave mentality. Yes, slavery took place, but why don't we deal with the thousands of years of history, of African history that exists in this country we call the United States of America prior to slavery coming to existence? Why don't we deal with the fact that African people were here for tens of thousands of years before there was anybody else here? Here in the United States. I'm not talking about the planet Earth. I'm talking about here in the land we call the United States of America. But when you have movies about ancient Kemet, like Exodus, Gods and Kings, they have Europeans portraying ancient Egyptian rulers, but many of the servants were played by Black African people. So there's a concerted effort to hide this type of information and to keep African people ignorant, to dumb us down. Okay, this is why conscious hip hop was taken in a different direction. Okay, this is why conscious hip hop was taken in a different direction. So we deal with things like the origin of the word America, the origin of the word Africa. Africa was not named after Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. Okay, we deal with language. When you look at Cassell's Latin English Dictionary, page 11, 2002 edition, in the entry for a fear, it breaks down Africanus And Africanus means belonging to Africa. Africanus means belonging to Africa. Africa was not named after Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. That's just some misinformation. That's not true. Don't know where the hell that rumor started. It's not true. First of all, when you study his family's last name, it was not Africanus. His family's last name was not Africanus. Okay, it was Scipio. He gets his last name, that surname Africanus, after he conquers an area of Carthage. After he conquers the territory that we know as Carthage, after he conquers that area, then he gets that name, because that's what it was already referred to. That Afri, that prefix Afri, refers to the Afri, who are a group of Black North African people in Algeria and Tunisia. And Tunisia used to be, what we call Tunisia today, used to be called what? Carthage. This is Dr. John Henry Clark, one of our great Grandmaster Scholar Warriors. Dr. Clark taught us that all history is a current event. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion. All history is a current event. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion. Okay, so we deal with the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal. Okay, and how they civilized Europe. And then we deal with how the Moors set up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages. The technology that they take in, the teachers they take in, is going to set up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages, set sail on the Nina, Pinta, and the Santa Maria, right? And Columbus, in his 4 voyages, discoveries that he makes, helps to really lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people. And Spain gets involved in the transatlantic slave trade right after the Portuguese do, because the Portuguese are going to dominate for the first 200 years. They get involved, going back to 1419, Prince Henry the Navigator sending ships around the west coast of Africa. And then in the early 1440, right around 1441, they're going to start picking up Africans as slaves, taking them back to Portugal. And the Spanish are going to get involved right after him. So in 1482, we see Columbus sailing around the west coast of Africa, picking up enslaved African people. Okay, but we're going to see this explode with the discovery of these new lands, Puerto Rico and Haiti and Jamaica and Cuba, things like this. And what this is going to do for Spain is going to give them new territory, okay, to set up plantations like sugarcane plantations. It's going to give them new territory to explore for mineral wealth, for gold, different things like this, okay? And you're going to see the transatlantic slave trade explode, and you're going to see these other European nations come in and fight over these lands. So you're going to have fights between, for instance, we see Jamaica, 1494, is uncovered by Columbus, but we're going to see the British gain control of Jamaica in 1655, which leads to Queen Anne and the Jamaican Maroons beating the hell out of the British, okay, and forcing them into a peace treaty around 1739, I think it was, forcing them into a peace treaty. Okay, so you're going to see these lands fall into the hands of other people. You're going to see things like the Papal Bulls of 1455. You see the Doctrine of Discovery, 1452. You're going to see the Treaty of Tordesillas, June 7, 1494, where the Pope divides the non-Christian world between Portugal and Spain, and sends Portugal and Spain out to conquer the non-Christian world, because Portugal and Spain have been fighting one another, killing one another over these new lands. Okay. And the Catholic Church, which is in control, they're saying, no, go out and conquer these lands based upon manifest destiny. Go out and conquer these lands in the name of the Catholic Church and in the name of your respective countries, and stop fighting amongst one another. Okay, because the Catholic Church wants this wealth also to further enrich the Catholic Church. And these various European nations are trying to rebuild themselves coming out of the Dark Ages, where they were hit by the bubonic plague, the Black Death, from 1347 to 1400 in spurts. And Europe is going to lose between 1/4 to 1/3 of their population, between 25 million to about 75 million people. Europe loses because of the Black Death. So they're trying to recover. So you have to understand the chronology of history and how a sequence of historical events lead up to a larger event taking place. Once again, the transatlantic slave trade did not just fall out of the sky. Okay, it was the sequence. It was the result of a sequence of historical events. And you can't start studying the transatlantic slave trade in 1619. You can't start in 1492, even then. Okay, And you also have to understand how the teachings the Moors taken to Europe are then going to lead to secret societies being created, European secret societies, whether you're talking about the Knights Templar, the poor knights of Christ, 1118 AD during the Second Crusades, okay, who later become known as the Knights Templar, whether you're talking about the Freemasons, things like this. And Freemasonry is based upon teachings coming out of ancient Kemet taken into Europe by the Moors. So if you look at a picture like this, we see the Washington Monument, which is a Tekken, an ancient African symbol. It's a Tekken, okay? And we see that there were Tekken Nu for plural, in ancient Kemet. It's a symbol of resurrection. It's a symbol of it's a symbol of resurrection and rebirth, transformation, and resurrection. Okay, so this is very, very important history. Okay, now when we look at things like Freemasonry, okay, so Freemasonry, and let me bring this back up here just a second. How's everybody doing? Okay, I lost something here. I'm not sure. Okay, we posted a link again. It says register here. If you need me to post a link again, how you all enjoying this information? How's everybody doing? Okay. Who wants to register for this online course that we have starting up this evening? We're going to start right around 7:30 p.m. because I got to wrap up here. We'll do a couple hours tonight. It's normally on Fridays, 8 p.m. to Dr. Issa. What's up, my brother? My brother, Dr. Issa. Now we're gonna have Dr. Issa. I'm gonna interview Dr. Issa this week sometime because Dr. Issa is responding to Dr. Wallace Muhammad on the Breakfast Club. Okay, what's up, Dr. Issa, my man? How you doing, brother? And then I already announced Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries, one of my teachers. You saw us put the broadcast. Now this is not against Islam. This is the comments of Dr. Wallace Muhammad. Okay, now Dr. Wallace Muhammad may want to clarify his comments, and that'll be good. Okay, but you cannot attack the discipline of Africana studies. The reason why is we have to be very clear, and I know Dr. Issa is going to break this down because he knows this better than I do. But the reason why I was able to take Africana studies classes at Wayne State University is because African American students had sit-ins. They had sit-ins at Helen Newberry Joy, the financial aid office at Wayne State, 1988, 1989. And they took over the financial aid office to demand the creation of an Africana Studies department at Wayne State University, which is in Detroit, which is damn near 90% black at that time, because there was no Africana Studies department. The reason why you have Africana Studies departments at various universities is because those college students, the late 80s, early 90s, there were sit-ins that these African-American students had demanding an Africana Studies department. That's why they exist today. If you go back to the 1960s on college campuses, African-American students were having sit-ins demanding a Black Studies department. So you have to understand this history, and you can't disrespect or denigrate the discipline of Africana studies, because for my research, Africana studies is a more systematic study of the history of African people, Pan-African studies, things like this. It's a more systematic study than traditionally even Black studies. It's taking a more systematic approach to the research, the documentation, things like this. Africana studies is very, very important. Doesn't mean that may be the only degree that you get, you know. And if it costs you $80,000 for that degree, you may want to look at another college. I know when I went to Wayne State, you had people that went to Wayne County Community College. They would take some prerequisite classes there at Wayne County Community College because it was cheaper, and then take other classes at Wayne State. Okay, so when we look at Freemasonry, right? Look at Freemasonry. The word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun, mass and sun. So Mason means child of light. And this expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. So if you look at cartoons, Whether you look at Tom and Jerry or the Road Runner, things like this, you look at cartoons, when a cartoon character gets an idea, a light bulb goes on above their head, because light, the concept of light or the sun, was synonymous with knowledge, and darkness was synonymous with ignorance. So if you have a child that's not too bright, well, just there, the term bright in reference to knowledge is in reference to light, and the child is not too bright, you say that's a dim-witted child, D-I-M, dim-witted child, right? So the Moors are taking the light, the knowledge, into the dark continent. The dark continent was not Africa, it was Europe, because Europe lacked the knowledge. So the term child of light, or sons and daughters of light, was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the whole concept of liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium that George G.M. James talks about in Stolen Legacy, that comes from ancient Kemet. The concept of liberal arts colleges, that goes back to ancient Kemet. And when you go to college, you get your credentials in a series of degrees: bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, etc. Read Egypt on the Potomac. That's one of the books we use in the class. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along, just so people understand. But it's good for your library. It's good to have for your library. Read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. Fantastic, fantastic book. Pages 18 to 32. Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing on Facebook? How y'all like this information? Okay. Who wants to register for this online course? Remember, all the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again. Okay. And then, as soon as you register, I forgot, there's bonus. It's like, I don't know, maybe 12 hours of bonus content. There's a lot of bonus content I have for you also. And I have a couple sessions. I have a couple classes from the previous session we did also. Okay, so when we look at Freemasonry, a lot of people don't know that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. Okay, and four out of the first five U.S. presidents were Freemasons as well. Okay. All right, so we deal with Asar, Set, and Heru. We deal with the influence of the First Holy Trinity into religion, okay? Because you have to understand this. We try to deal with a chronology of history. All right, we deal with why was Christmas celebrated on December 25th, when nowhere in the biblical text does it state that Jesus the Christ was born on December 25th. This may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness, as I stated before, but the only time growth occurs is when you step outside your comfort zone and learn things, number one, that you did not already know. Number two, I provide you with the resources for you to go do your own research. I tell people, you don't have to believe a word that I say. Go do your own research. Proper documentation ends all conversation. See, the letter J was not created till 1630 AD. The letter J is derived from the letter I. And if you read The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, who's another one of my teachers as well, go listen to the podcast, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can hear the numerous interviews I've done with Dr. Walter Williams. Chapter 9 of his book deals with the whole history of the letter J. The letter J is derived from the letter I. The letter J is an I with a hook on it. It's not by accident that the letter J comes after the letter I in your 26-character alphabet. That's not by accident. It's because the letter J is derived from the letter I. So when you look up the word Jesus in the dictionary and you study the etymology of that word, it takes you back to Yeshua, which is Amharic. Amharic is the ancient language spoken by the Ethiopians or the Abyssinians. Amharic. Letter J didn't exist. So we have to understand this history. And if you go look at the original King James version of the Bible, King James version of the Bible, 1600 AD, the name was Iesus with the I, wasn't the J, because the J didn't exist. So we have to understand this history. But Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and Nellie Fuller taught us that if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else, and I do mean everything else that you think that you understand, will totally confuse you. If you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. And we deal with the origin of the concept of race. We deal with the origins of racism, because racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people. That's bigotry. It has nothing to do with calling people racial epithets or anything like that. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the ideology of white supremacy. But you have to understand a history of white supremacy and how when Europeans are coming out of the Dark Ages, they start to circumnavigate the globe. They realize the majority of the people on Earth are not European. When they intermix with these populations, have sex with these women in these various areas, that child comes out is no longer European. They're realizing they don't put things in place, they could become genetically wiped off the face of the earth. They already saw this happen for 800 years with the Africans known as the Moors in Europe, because the Moors intermixed into the population. This is why when you look at Europeans' coats of arms, when you look at their coat of arms and they show their ancestry on these coats of arms, somewhere on that family tree, they would have an African Moor. See, they already saw this for 800 years. So this is one of the things that built up tensions between Europeans and the Moors. A lot of our people are under the misconception that when the transatlantic transatlantic slave trade starts in the mid 1400s, this was the first time Europeans came in contact with African people. No, it's not. They were already having contact with them for 800 years. No, they were already having contact with them. Okay, so now this is Dr. David Imhotep, okay? And Dr. David Imhotep, like I said, wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. His book thoroughly documents an African presence in this country we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. At least 51,700 years ago. Now, Dr. Albert Goodyear, and this is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear, archaeologist for the University of South Carolina. He made a major discovery back in 2004, okay, in Allendale County, South Carolina. This is what they discovered. Artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174 D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, etc. Thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay, thoroughly documenting an African presence going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. All right, so so this is extremely important. All right, let's see here. Okay, so, and this is an article from ScienceDaily.com. ScienceDaily.com. Now, these African people were the Khoisan. Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book. We also deal with other very recent archaeological discoveries, like the one from earlier in June 2017, dealing with the skeletal remains of Homo sapiens, modern man, in Morocco that date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago, which is 100,000 years older, at least, than the oldest known fossils that they had, which dated back 195,000 years ago, of modern man in Ethiopia. Okay. And see, the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. So this is an article from ScienceDaily.com. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. ScienceDaily.com. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. This article is from 2004. You can go research it yourself. This is not from Infowars.com. You can go research this yourself. ScienceDaily.com. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay. Yes, the transatlantic slave trade happened. Not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying that African people were here continuously for tens of thousands of years before that happened. There was a presence from ancient Kemet here. You had African people. You had the Khoisan building the mounds that were here. You had about 1 million mounds all throughout this land. And then if you look at the discovery coming out of San Diego from April 26, 2017, mastodon skeleton that paleontologists are saying was smashed by humans. This skeleton dates back at least 130,000 years ago. Only people on the face of the earth then were African people. So if this is true, this puts a human presence in North America 100,000, more than 100,000 years before we have been told that humans were here, because the oldest site that archaeologists like to point to is the Clovis culture discovery in New Mexico that dates back about 13,000 years ago. But they're trying to suppress the information from Dr. Albert Goodyear because he's putting an African presence here, and this is what Dr. David Imhotep deals with, because African people were here before Native Americans came into existence. We were here in this land before Native Americans came into existence, because Native Americans are the offspring of the intermixing of Africans who come to this country at least 51,700 years ago, and Asians who come here around 3000 BC. They're going to intermix, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start this class. You can join us. You can register for this online course. We'll post a link here. It says register here. This class is a 12-hour, 6-week online course. It normally meets on Fridays. We're doing a session today. We'll do another session Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. All the sessions are recorded. If you miss any of it, go back and watch it over and over again. Not a problem. The course is only $40. Go ahead and register there. You could join us in class. And as soon as you register, we have a lot of bonus content, a lot of bonus footage for you to watch. Also, we have some previous sessions of the last class that I taught as well. Previous sessions of the last course that I taught. You can watch that as well. We have bonus content for you also. Okay. All right. So this class is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And be sure to follow our Facebook fan page here, the African History Network, Those watching on YouTube, how's everybody doing on YouTube as well? And got the 19 Report, Hetty House, Angela Flood, also on YouTube, and we'll post a link here also on our YouTube channel for you to register. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. A lot of information there. All of my DVD lectures, podcasts of our shows, recommended reading list of books there. Also, you can keep up with where I'm going to be as well. I will be in Atlanta. I'll be in Atlanta third weekend in July for the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. The Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. That's always the third weekend in July. Go to liberatedmindsexpo.com, liberatedmindsexpo.com. Okay. For more information on the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. And I'm usually one of the presenters there, and I'm a vendor there also. Okay. All right. What's BC if you don't? Okay. BC. Okay. BC, according to Europeans, means before Christ. But you have other scholars that use different dating systems, like BCE, before the Common Era. Okay. Or ACE, after the Common Era. There's an attempt to move away from that. BC means before Christ. AD means Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. Okay. Using the dating system BC before Christ is really problematic if you understand history, but this is the dating system they use. But they also, some people also teach that creation started 4004 BC, because Bishop James Ussher in the 17th century said creation started October 23rd, 4004 BC, but which is not historically accurate. But there's an attempt to confine history within that timeline. Okay, this is why a lot of this information is being suppressed, because the archaeological research will totally blow these timelines out of the water. Okay, and this is why they keep, when these new archaeological discoveries are made, they keep having to push dates back. They keep having to push dates back. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. Okay. And McGill said the majority of original Indians were black. 1607, Jamestown, Virginia, Captain John Smith said he was captured by a group of black Indians. He said he was captured by a group of black Indians. And Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in the book. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence. We deal with this in the class. It's just one of the texts we use in the course. You don't have to buy any of these books. We use them for reference. We have articles, video clips, all that stuff in the course. Okay. All right. So also check out AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That's my website as well, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. A lot of information there. You can also order the Black Friday documentaries there also that I'm in, and some of the other documentaries like Resurrecting Black Wall Street, The Blueprint. I'm in the new documentary, Elementary Genocide Part 3, coming out in the next couple of months as well. Okay, hey, remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. And we'll see you in class. Peace.